All right, everybody. I am here today with Paige McLeod, the owner and photographer of Glean and Co. in Boise, Idaho. Paige does beautiful newborn and maternity portraits and is absolutely killing it. I was first introduced to Paige when Andrew Helmich had her on his Photo BizX podcast, and I reached out to her and we just had a little chat. During the chat, we were talking about texting, and I was sharing what I was doing with texting, and she wanted to learn more. So since then, we've been going back and forth, and she's started to do some of the same texting that I'm doing and modifying it probably as well. We'll talk about that throughout this podcast. And she uses Skipio, which is the same thing that I'm using. And I want to learn some of the lessons learned and overall how it's going with her business. Paige, thank you so much for giving me some time today to chat about your business and what you're doing. And I'm certain it's going to be helpful for somebody out there to learn more about what they can do with texting and how they can use it in their business. So thanks again for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your business. I know you do newborn and maternity. Your photography is awesome. It's very natural, I feel like, when I look at it and everything. But tell me a little bit about that. How long you've been in business, and tell me a little history about your business.
Yeah. So Glean Photography actually used to be a wedding photography business. And I came on board in 2017 and we became Glean and Co. And I took over all things maternity and newborn babies because my old business partner didn't want to deal with the babies and she just wanted to do the weddings. So she was with us until 2019, and then she moved away and sold me the business. And I immediately got rid of all things wedding. I said, I don't want to do wedding photography. And so 2019, we officially became maternity, newborn, and young families. So usually when the youngest kid in the family is about 8 or so, I hand them off to other local photographers. And I really prefer the toddlers and tiny babies to all that. And yeah, so we are a IPS company. We do all prints and products and all that good stuff. In-person ordering appointments right here in our studio. They come back to us and see everything in person. And we kind of specialize in that high-end luxury newborn vibe. So we do, professional hair and makeup for moms, and champagne in the studio, and snacks, and we have a full client closet and all that good stuff. So it's kind of a full service shop.
That's awesome. So I'm curious. This is
Yeah.
off the script kind of question, but you say you stop when the kids are about 7 or 8 and you pass them off to somebody else. Like, do you have a list of people that you're like, hey, these are my trusted photographers that are similar to kind of my price points and stuff that you kind of pass them off to?
I do, and I don't. Like, for the clients that have been with me, I have a couple clients that every fall they come back and we do family photos. And their kids are kind of getting to that point where I probably should hand them off, but I've known them for so long now that they're still with me. It's more of if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, we just moved here and our youngest is 8 and we have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. Can you do our family photos? That's usually when I'm like, hey, we actually specialize in toddlers and brand new babies, but you might want to look into this other photographer. And so I have a couple photographers. My ex-business partner actually moved back and started a documentary photography group company. And so she does really nice work. And so I often send people to her just because I like her a lot.
Okay. It's just interesting because for me, I do, younger kids, and I try and stay away from newborns, but sometimes they come in and we just do a different kind of look with newborns. But it's man, when they get to 8, 9, 10 years old, I bring those people on all day long. It's the 2 and 3-year-olds that are making me pull my hair out sometimes.
I think because we're very low volume, you guys are doing so many sessions that you can have all that variety, but we're very low volume. My sweet spot is 8 to 12 sessions a month. And that'll be a combination of, maybe 6 newborn sessions and 3 maternities and, a milestone or something like that. So I don't want to take half those spots up with sessions that I'm not excited about. I really want to, if I could have my choice, I would only do newborns.
No, I totally get it. And it's funny because we just recently did a podcast with Andrew Helmich, who I was talking about in the intro, and I had told him, I said, if I were to go back in time, I'd probably do it a little bit different. I love the volume in some aspects, but I eventually can see that I don't want to do this forever. And so I envy people like you that are only doing 8 to 12 sessions a month and making a living out of it. Cause like, because then you can pick and choose a little bit more. You don't have to, like, you're not trying to reach the masses. But anyway, that's not what we're
Yeah.
here to talk about today. Let's get into what we're here to talk about. Like before that, like before we get into the texting and stuff, I want to know, and I'm sure the listener is going to want to know, um, how are you getting clients that you're starting to be able to text them? So where are you getting your majority of your clients, and what kind of marketing? We don't have to get in the nitty gritty, but like, what are some of the places of marketing that you're doing?
Yeah. So we have a couple different sources. So we have lots of different places around town that have work up on the walls. So we have these little things called Pregnant in Boise. It's like a little promo card that gives them a discount off their session, and they can join this list that it's like a digital magazine that talks about like OBs and midwives and doulas and like all the resources and providers that you'd want to use within Boise if you're having a baby. So there's a little QR code. They get it, they join our list, and that would give us their information. So that's one way that we would reach out and be like, hey, we see that you're having a baby in Boise.
So that's real
Another
quick
way,
with that
yeah,
real quick. Is that a magazine you're doing, like an online magazine you're doing, or is it a publication
yeah.
that you're a part of?
No. It's one that I put together.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
cool. Okay, continue.
It's just it's a Canva document that
Oh
like
yeah, no,
pretty
no, I
and
think
it's
that's awesome though.
and
That's
everything.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
It's kind of
So
like
we
your own
reached
like
out
little private groups, but you're sending out the information instead of doing like a mama's group on Facebook or something where
yeah.
usually outgrow those kind of things. So anyway,
Yeah, no, and I've found that moms groups generally don't provide the like really high ticket clients either. It's
yeah.
usually people looking for like,
When people tag me on Facebook and in those community groups and say they're like looking for a photographer, I actually reach out to them and say, "Don't tag me in those groups anymore, please," because it's
I,
always somebody that's looking for somebody to spend $100. It's like
right.
I don't even reach out to them. I don't even respond because it's like it's never worked out well for me.
Yeah. Well, that kind of like leads me to that like texting. Like I've found that like that's a really great way to still be able to respond to those people and be like, hey, yeah, we do offer newborn photography. Here's kind of how we do things. And they can like eliminate themselves,
Yeah.
and they go like, oh, cool. I wanted this for free. And you're telling me it's going to be probably $2,000 to get what I actually want. So
Everybody wants photography for free.
yes. Yeah.
Let's
So
go
we
back
have
into
that
the
guide.
marketing. Somewhat back to the marketing.
Yeah.
We don't diverse or digress or whatever, but talk to me a little bit more. So you got like the
Yep.
one thing with the QR code. So what else are you doing?
So we got the Pregnant in Boise guide, and then we've got wall art up in a couple different locations around town for the in-person stuff. And then we've also got a couple different we do a chunky baby contest every January where everybody can like bring their babies in for a milestone session, and then it's like a really reduced session fee, and then they get to come in, bring their photos in, and then the winner wins like a full family shoot and $1,000 gift card. So it's a pretty good prize and people want to win it. And so we get a lot of like when you vote for the chunky baby, we get your information on that. So we've done that for the last 3 years, and that's always a pretty good, it's like a nice way to get people like in the door and kind of learn our process, but like not feel too committed to like, oh, I'm going to spend thousands of dollars. It's not a great moneymaker, like to be
It's like
totally
people that are using mini sessions as a lead gen,
right.
like a
Yeah.
lost lead tool to. I
Yes.
get to be introduced to what you do, but it's not really what you do. So it's the same
Right.
type
Yeah,
concept.
exactly. So I'm actually like in the middle of hiring an associate photographer to start shooting those for me, which will be really
All right,
nice.
there you go. There you go.
But yeah, so we do Chunky Baby in January. We've done a couple of Facebook like giveaway, like win a newborn session sort of things. I try and do those twice a year, not more than that, because I don't want it to look like we're constantly giving stuff away.
Right.
So I usually do that in the spring, and then again like at the end of the year. That I started that last year, so I've done it 3 times now. And it's been really successful. People tend to respond. That was like one of the big ways that I found out text messaging works really well too, is like doing those giveaways and getting people to just DM me back before I got into the skipio side of things. I was like, oh, people actually respond when you send them a message and just ask questions like, is this your first baby? And so I think that was kind of my like initial entry into this, like, oh, That's a lot better than like sending them an email and asking them to book a call.
Yeah, so like I mean, it's a problematic thing that I've learned in my business. I would love to do more of the DMing back and forth type of thing, but with the volume and the amount of leads and stuff we get, it's like I would have to have like 5 people just constantly
Yeah.
texting back and forth with those kind of things. So I get it. Like, because I mean, on Facebook you can do like marketing where it's just like they're have them send me a message, like they're enticing people like to answer or inquire through a message and all that stuff. But yeah, so it's great. And at the volume you're at, it works out really well. But you said a key thing that I really like, that kind of taught you some things about like text messaging. So that leads us really into you're doing all these marketing things and stuff. So where in the process, how are you, is it a standard workflow that you're kind of doing, that a lead comes in or somebody clicks that QR code at the store or whatever? Where do they go from there, and when do they end up in your text messaging kind of process?
Yeah. So it kind of depends on how they came into our funnel and what they're looking for. But like, for instance, right now we're doing a newborn model call. And so the way that they're coming into our system is there's a Facebook ad running that has an instant form on it. So they would be put onto our Google Sheet.
Mhm.
And then that puts them into Skipio, like it zaps it to Skipio. And then it also zaps it to our CRM. We use Tave. And so it puts it in both places. Tave immediately sends an email out to them saying, here's some more details about our model call, book a call. And then they get put into a campaign in Skipio that sends them that like initial, like, hey, like, thanks for inquiring about our model call. Is this your first baby? And kind of opens that door to talking. So that one is like a very streamlined campaign because we've mapped out like every part of it. Now, if you came to me out of the blue and you just sent me an email and you said, hey, I'm having a baby in November, what's your newborn pricing? Like, at that point, like my studio manager goes in and she's putting that into Tave, which triggers a newborn email that goes out with some details on our packages and whatnot. Then she zaps it over to Skipio, which puts it in there. And then she manually enters something that has something to do with that initial inquiry. So, thanks so much for reaching out. So exciting that you're having your first baby. Have you thought about what you want to do with your newborn photos? I don't know, like whatever
Yeah,
happens to be at that point.
that's great. That's great. So, I mean, basically what you're saying is it happens pretty quick right away, like
Yeah.
after they've kind of uh, been brought into the process, right? So, like
Yes.
once they come into that, is it kind of like an automated system that if you send them a text to a few days later, if they haven't responded or whatever, are you sending them a series of texts, or is it just like, hey, I send a text, nothing happens, and then they don't get anything else? How are you doing
Yes.
that?
Well, so we kind of have two ways that we're doing it right now. We're kind of exploring those different
Yeah.
options, but I have a generic lead, like follow-up, if you will, like campaign built in Skipio. So it says something like, hey, we haven't heard back from you. Like, are you still interested in doing a session with us? Like, it's not specific to either maternity or newborn or anything. It doesn't have to be about,
Right.
it's not specific to them. So, that initial email that goes out, like if we have any details about them at all beyond just like a due date, if we know that they have an older sibling or we know that they want outdoor photos or something, we send that first text as a like a personal message. Because
Okay.
I don't want them to feel like they got this email or they sent us this inquiry, we ignored it completely, and they got a generic response that says like, hey, thanks for replying, And so I want that to be like a very personalized message that they feel like somebody is actually like reading what they sent in
Right.
and responding appropriately. And so if they start talking to us, we have a lead status in our Tave that says communicating via Skipio. And so we change it to that lead status. So we know that like this person's been texting us back. They have responded.
Right.
And we just continue the conversation. It automatically the next day we'll go back, like that next morning, we look at all of our leads again and we go, okay, where is this person in the process? And we go into Skipio, find that person and say, all right, Liz responded, but then she just kind of stopped responding.
Right.
And so
Right.
at that point, we change the lead status to, what does it say? Like, waiting on client response, I think.
Mhm.
And then that puts them into a new campaign for that generic lead. So
Okay.
then they get those, like, I think it's 7 different text messages over 3 weeks or something
Right.
like that,
Right.
that are, that follow-up reminder. And it takes them out of that. As soon as they respond again, it'll kick them out of that campaign so we can continue the personalized conversation. But it allows us to, like, kind of
Yeah.
forget about
No, yeah. No, and it's great because like you're doing it kind of in a way where you're using your CRM to kind of trigger some of these things, but there are ways, like for the listener that like is looking for a texting thing. Like I know in Skipio, there's ways of doing it that if something happens, then within Skipio you can put them into a different campaign and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's so many ways to do things. It's
Well,
like
and there's so
ridiculous.
much I haven't learned about
Oh no,
Scipio.
it's I learned a lot too. So
Yeah.
I was lucky. Jared, who is the president of Scipio, he came out here and met with me a couple, or I guess it was 3 or 4 months ago, and we spent 24 hours together hanging out, talking about stuff, and he showed me things that I was just blown away. I think you and I met after
Yeah.
that, and I showed you some of the things that he was talking about. But like one of them is, and it kind of goes into what you're saying. We have like canned responses that you can have like pre-typed out that it's like,
Yeah. And I
um,
definitely use those.
yeah, and it's so great. I didn't even know that that was an option until he showed
Yeah.
me that, and it's so great because you get like I'm sure you're in the same boat, like you get people asking the same questions all the time, and instead of typing out the same answer every single time, then you just go to the canned response and it types out, and
Yeah.
the answer's already there. It's kind of like for us, it's like, does this going to cost me anything? And so we kind of have like a canned response, and like the cost is up to you. It's like, or whatever. And
Yeah.
then like here's our experience page that goes over the processes and what our costs are and all that stuff. But the same thing, and this is, I think I told you this, but for the listener, this is a really good thing for you to learn to do. One of the bigger questions we got was, where are you located? And we get
Yeah.
that question a lot because we have one of it that makes it kind of confusing is we're 2 studios, but if you go to our website and you're not plugging or poking around enough, you think that we're just in Houston. But if you like really poke around, you go, oh, they got 2 studios. So we get a lot of people that will say, oh, you're in Houston, I'm not going there. And then, but the campaign that they got put into is New York. So I know they came from a New York lead. So
Yeah.
we'll tell them, oh, we have a studio in New York. It's at 28th and Broadway, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things that was told, and I don't know if I told you this, but he told me to take our URL from
Mhm.
Google Maps. And so when you're telling them where your location is, put that URL at the end of that, so that when they get that text, they're getting the URL that's actually your Google My Business page that
In
shows them the map, it shows them your reviews, it shows them pictures, it
Oh,
shows them. I see you writing things down here.
I'm writing it down.
But he had me put that in there, but it's such a genius little thing that
Yeah.
when you click on that, now it's taking you to all the information about your studio, where your
Yeah.
website is, and all this stuff. So we added that one little simple thing to it that's really cool. But what,
Oh,
canned responses are great. I want to back up a little bit though, because you mentioned with some of your stuff you personalize those texts. So
mhm.
how does that flow into like Skipio is an automated texting thing where personalization is different. You can do things, but you can't do too many things. So how are you doing that and working
Yeah.
that without like, now you're lower volume, so I get that. So it makes it a
Yeah.
little bit easier to manage. Somebody like me that's getting 150 leads a day, I can't
Yeah.
personalize everybody.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, like when we're doing a big campaign like we are right now with the newborn models, it gets pretty overwhelming because you're
Mhm.
trying to remember like who everybody is and what their story is, and you're getting all these texts and trying to keep it personal. So, I mean, I definitely think that if you were really high volume, it would be hard to do
Right.
that. That being said, I do use the canned responses a lot for that reason, because a lot of times they have similar things, like they'll have a big sister, they're having a baby boy, they're due at Christmas, like there's some things that you can like create a pre-written text that like is pretty easy to quickly send. So like if I see something that comes in and they're like, oh, I have a 2-year-old son and we're expecting a baby girl. Like I have a thing that says, hey, bracketed name for client's first
Yeah, yeah,
name,
yeah.
you know, so exciting that you're having a new baby girl. That's so cool. Is your son so excited to become a big brother or something like that, you know, where it's like, it's pretty much like the same. And like, there's some of those that like, I can use it and maybe it doesn't totally fit, but I can really quickly change it to you're having a baby boy and is your big sister so excited, you know? And so
Right.
like you just make tiny little changes to those text messages and then it's personalized to that person.
What yeah, and the cool thing about Scipio with that kind of thing that I think, like, obviously we're both Scipio people, so if you're going, "Is
Yeah.
this an ad for Scipio?" It's not an
Yeah.
ad for Scipio, but I would highly recommend it, and,
Yeah.
I'll put a, referral code in, the show notes and stuff if you wanna do Scipio, but it's like a really seamless process, that's why we use it,
Yeah.
and it's super easy to do. But
Well,
one of the things that's kinda cool with those texts you're talking about too is if, you can actually put your, like keywords and stuff in there that it's like when I type in, like if I'm thinking it for you, baby boy with sister,
mhm,
then it would have that baby boy with sister,
yeah,
baby boy with brother, and then like those would be
yes,
two canned
all
responses.
those.
But the only thing that changes is like, congratulations on having your baby boy, the sister or whatever, or versus the brother or whatever,
Yep.
and you don't have to go and do those little tweaks and stuff that are
No, and
in
we're
there.
trying to slowly build up that library of those
Yeah, no,
baby
and it's that's
images.
all you can do with it, right? We're
Yeah,
doing the same thing. I'll have a thing that I'm like, "Oh, that's a cool," like, we seem to use this or say this a lot, so I'll
yeah.
add it to it and everything, so
Yeah, we
awesome.
have a list going in our studio called the done twice list, and it's like everything that you do more than once, you have to automate somehow so that you don't have to do it again.
Nice, I love
So
that,
I
that's so
try and,
good.
like, add things like that to my done twice list so that, and
That's a
especially
little it's an extra nugget of information from Paige. If you're doing
yeah,
things more than twice, you probably should automate it.
yes, yes, absolutely. I'm trying to do that more and more, especially because my studio manager left in June, and so I hired somebody new, and she's wonderful, and she's picking things up super quickly, but I was like, so much more needs to be automated, and so much needs to be explained when you have to, like, do this whole new, like, "Oh, somebody new coming in, how do you do this?" Like, I don't wanna have to teach her how to talk to people. I wanna just be like, "Here's some canned responses. This is what you're gonna send."
Right.
And then she doesn't have to think about what to say. She just looks at the canned responses and it's super easy. So now it's like anybody could step in and take over that role instead of it has to be this person because she understands my business and
Right, right.
yeah.
No, and it's like you. I think you and I are very similar in this sense. It's creating systems that are easily like if you know, for example, like today, my studio manager's out not feeling well or whatever, or like they've got a family thing going on, and it's just like I can easily step in, log into her thing and do her job, but like the systems are the same. So my voice and our like we've created our voice, not
Yep.
John's voice or Kelly's
Mhm.
voice or my studio manager. It's our voice. And so when I go into her thing, it's like they're talking to Kelly, and
Yep.
so when Kelly comes back to work, the next day or a week from now, or if she's on vacation or whatever, nothing's really changed. When somebody texts her, it's the same communication. And what's cool too is we're not there yet. We're kind of slowly integrating into it. But with Scipio, you can add multiple numbers and you can pass out numbers on to different people. So like after they book a session, maybe it goes to your studio manager and
Oh
they're
yeah.
communicating with them. But what's neat about it is when it gets passed over to that person, it comes from that person's phone number. So it's like it's coming from a new person, but they can see all the previous things that were said
Yeah.
in the text thread
They know.
from so like if it gets to the photographer and there was a conversation, you can like look through it, and now that's in the photographer's hands. It's coming from the photographer's number, but he can see like before they booked, this is what the conversation was. After they book, when it was with the studio manager, this was a conversation. And for me, what it turns into is like, okay, there's some red flags or some things that I need to make sure I really hit on because there was conversations twice. Like they asked
Yep.
this question to the booking person, and then they asked the same kind of question to the studio manager. So I'm going to make sure I hammer it more when we're in person because
Yeah.
something's still not
You're not
getting through their head, right? So
yeah.
but no, it's a really powerful tool in that aspect and everything. So do you like when you go through somebody goes through your process, they don't respond, they don't um they do respond or they have to think about it or whatever, do you put them into a series of things that like later on they might get something else, or like once they're done, are they done?
They're kind of done. So we have like it's like a 3-week window or so where they're getting stuff from us. So our emails are meant to be more nurturing in nature.
Yeah.
So like we send out our what to wear guide that says like, no matter who you hire in the end, we found this to be a wonderful resource for our clients. We send out that. And we send out, at the very end, we send out our pregnant in Boise guide, like assuming you didn't come in through the pregnant in Boise list. And it's like a baby gift for you. So bummed we haven't heard from you, but like, congratulations on your baby. Here's the link to our pregnant in Boise list. Hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, like if we haven't heard anything from them, I close the lead in my CRM, but I've had people come back and it pops back up. So it doesn't like close it forever. It just kind of hides it.
Right.
So
Right.
so I can still see like all the information. It's still in Skipio. So I can go back and be like, wait, I've seen this lady's name before. Who is she? And then I realized she reached out about maternity photos. Now her baby's 2 weeks old and she's realizing that she really does want newborn photos and is coming back into the system. And so I can kind of pick up where we left off. So I don't harass them too much. I do have an automated email that goes out on their due date that says like, happy due date, congratulations on your baby, cheers the Glean team. And so like, it's just kind of a like, hey, don't forget about us, like.
Right, right. Well, and I don't know if you know this, but there's actually a birth date option in
Yeah,
Skipio. Um, I don't know if you could turn it into like a due date thing so that it
yeah,
like will send
totally.
out an auto text. It's like, hey, I know your due date's coming up. Congratulations. I hope everything goes well and all that stuff. I mean, I just in my head, I'm thinking, how could you utilize that kind of thing? It's just like
Yeah.
for you, it's kind of interesting because um to ask a birth date for the baby is not a big deal. For me to ask a birth date of my clients is kind of like weird. It's just like, why are you asking my birth date? But
Maybe if you're like, we like to send out,
no, so with all
thing.
transparency, we are doing it with one campaign. We're testing it for something because
Yeah.
we're kind of doing some looking at like what our audience is and what's coming in and all that stuff. So I put it on there so I could look and see, like, I don't know how old anybody is that's coming through
Yeah.
our stuff, and I was just kind of curious. So I was like, and I wonder if they'll answer the question if I put it on there. And I put it on there, and people are answering the question. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. you know,
Yeah.
it hasn't stopped people from filling out the form. But yeah, but I think that's a way you can do it in everything within the newborn world. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah. So like Jared, one of the things he taught me, and I'll share this with you is after you offboard them for however long that might be, he said like maybe 30 days later, send them another text and
Yeah.
say, and maybe it's a different kind, like a special offer, like, but it's similar to what you've already offered or something. And then what we do is we send that 30-day text, and then we send a text a minute later that says, if you'd like to receive no longer receive text messages from us, just let us know. And then if they say, yeah, please stop, or they'll say stop, or and which will unsubscribe, we'll just unsubscribe them. I
Yeah.
mean, like I very rarely get like the rude person that's like, oh, stop texting me.
Yeah.
Most of them are very polite, but every now and then we do get somebody that was just like, oh man, I never filled out the form. I never contacted you guys to do a session. I am so sorry. Or I was out of town, or I was in Europe, or I was wherever I was, or whatever. And you sent that 30-day reminder, and now they're in a different place in life.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know if you're doing this, but another thing, don't send text messages at the same time of the day,
Yeah.
because
I do that.
everybody's life changes. So like
Yeah.
if you're having an automated text, maybe your first text is in the morning, maybe your second text is in the afternoon, maybe your third text is in the early evening, because everybody works different jobs. They have, they're picking up the kids from school, they're taking the kids to school, they work nights, they work days, they work mornings, I mean, so hit them at different points in the day along the way, because they might not be able to respond to the previous text that you sent at 9 in the morning because they're in the middle of the workday or whatever. But if you send it at 5 o'clock in the evening, oh, I'm off work, I forgot you texted me, because we all need reminders. Right.
Yeah, totally.
I get it
Yeah.
all the time. People go, you didn't text me back. I'm like, I'm sorry, I was in the middle of a session, you sent me the text, I looked at it, I wish I could star my texts on my like iPhone, I just can't do it very easily that way, other than making it a pinned text, and then I've got a bunch of pinned texts up there, it's like kind of pain in
Yep.
the butt. But anyway, yeah, so what do you think is working since you've started this? Because we've had this conversation probably 3-4 months ago. Like, when did
Yeah, at
we start doing
least.
this?
I can't
So
even
what do
remember.
you think is working well with that? Like, for all
Just
this?
text in general. Well, one thing that I really like about Skipio is, so like we started doing text messaging before we got Skipio,
Mhm.
and we just used our regular number and text messages and stuff.
Same with us.
One thing that happened immediately, especially with so we got it for our chunky baby contest at the beginning of January is when I first started using Skipio. And one thing that happened is we got our number was shut down entirely because they said that we were spamming people with the link to the chunky baby voting. And so I was like, oh crap, like my number shut down. I can't talk to anybody, it was a huge problem. So I got Skipio because of the link, like, business link
Mhm,
spam
mhm, mhm.
rules and like all of that.
You have to
So that,
fill out a form and all that stuff, and register yourself and
yeah,
everything. So that kind of helps it. It doesn't cure it. I learned that and we'll talk about that in
yeah,
a second, but it doesn't cure it, but it helps it. And I'll talk about an issue that I had that it's fixed, but
yeah,
it can still happen. But Scipio can fix it better than if you
better.
use
Yes.
Google
Yeah.
Voice to do the same thing that we're trying to do.
Yeah, so Google Voice shut me down because of that. So that was not great. So we switched over to Scipio, and then I really like being able to like segment people and tag people and like create these different groups. Like that really helps my organization for like, why is this person in here? What are we talking about with
Mhm.
them? Do we still need to follow up with them? And then just building those campaigns of like, I get distracted. I don't realize that 17 days have gone by since I last talked to this lead, and so it just keeps things like top of mind for everyone, which is great. I also really like that you can schedule texts
Mm.
because I have been trying really hard to have better boundaries.
I can't- I don't want to work on Saturdays.
Yes, yes, exactly. Like, well, new moms are an interesting beast because they're up in the middle of the night, and so they'll text me at 2 in the morning. And so, like, I tend to forget, like you just said, like, oh, somebody texted me in the middle of my photo shoot. I forgot to respond. Somebody texted me in the middle of the night. I'm not going to reply at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. So I better
Why not?
remember
They're
in
up
the
at
morning.
one. I'm just kidding.
Not anymore. My kids are
You
grown.
might book that session. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no,
I hope you
my
have
kids
your
are
phone off at 1 in the morning, Paige. If you don't, like a word of advice, turn it
yes.
off.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to respond to those, but sometimes I see them at weird times and I don't necessarily want a text message to go to them at 10:30 at night or whatever. And so I really like the schedule a text option because I'll reply right away and then schedule it to go first thing the next morning at like my normal business hour. So it goes at like 9:08 a.m. or
Mm,
whatever, like
mm.
something random. And then they respond at their time. And it's like, it's just so much easier to like not forget to do those things and be able to respond at a weird time. Just don't make the mistake of like forgetting to click the schedule button and just clicking send because I've done that before. Like, oh, I just text her at 10:30 at night.
Hey, yeah,
Whoops.
2 in the morning. I mean,
Yeah. So
um,
I made that mistake before, but I do really, really like that feature
well,
a
and
lot.
two things that go with that that's kind of cool, like you mentioned, and we'll talk about the blocking text and stuff because this is a very good educational moment for people that are interested in doing texting because it's not cut and dry like email is in some
Mhm.
respects. But um, one thing is like using a service like Skipio or something like that. The nice thing is like on Skipio, you can star, you can save a text. So like you can go to just your star text or your save text like of people that you like need to follow up with. Cause I have people that are like, hey, can you follow up with me in a month? Well, I'm not going to
Yeah.
remember to follow up with them in a
Right.
month. I don't schedule text, but I could and
Yeah.
have it be a month from now, send them a text. But what I do is I star them and then I go through the starred people every now and then to see, okay, oh, I need to follow up with this person. Or, I'm in the middle of a session, like you say, once I click it, it's not showing up as an unread text. And if I star it, then I can go back to it later. Where if you're
Yeah.
just using a regular Google Voice or your cell phone or something like that, that's not so easy because you can't just save those texts, right?
Yeah.
The other side of it too, that's really nice with a service like Skipio is you can set your hours. So like
Mhm.
if I don't want to get text messages on the weekend because I'm not working, then I don't send text messages on the weekend, right? And so you're probably very rarely are you going to get a text message just out of the blue. Usually you get text messages because you sent something and they're responding, right? So if you want to turn off sending text messages on the weekends, you can. And then anything that's in your automation processes on Monday morning, whenever that time frame is supposed to be, it'll pick up where it left off and it'll send them the text message starting Monday when you're back at work. You can't
Yeah.
do that with Google Voice or Google with your phone or whatever, right? And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of benefits to having like an automated texting system. And given I was the same way as you, I used Google Voice for the longest time, even when I started doing a lot of volume because it was cheap. It didn't
Yeah.
cost, it was like $10 a month to have a line, you know? And so it was just like, it didn't matter. But I ran into the same thing that you ran into. If you're using Google Voice and you start ramping up some of your volume, and especially if you're doing like Facebook ads or something like that, where you're getting 40, 50 leads a day, depending on whatever you're trying to do. And 40 50 leads a day might not even be a volume business. That just might be a general, like what you might even do at the
Yeah.
small amount because you're getting a lot of leads because you're using a lead form. But if I were to go and send a text to all those 40, 50 people a day, and because usually what we do is we sit in front of the computer and we go text, 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 and it takes us like 30 minutes or whatever. We still use it in some aspects, but we use a text where it's just like really fast because it's all canned text and we just
Yeah.
it sends it. But the problem with that I learned is when you, especially when you're sending links, is it will send the text and then after a while it will send the text and it won't send the link. And so I was getting texts
Oh,
back from people saying, I got your
where's
text message, but it says click here so you can schedule a call with us. There's nothing to click. And so I would go to our Calendly link and I would send just the link and they're like, there it is. And they're like, I didn't get anything from you. But unfortunately, that's how I had to learn it. And it's very
yeah.
embarrassing as a business owner to say, hey, I'm sending you a
Yeah.
link to click and I'm telling you to click it and there's nothing there and it makes you kind of look stupid. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So, I mean, luckily you just turn around and say, yeah, I apologize. What's your email address? And I'll email it to you. I don't know what's going on. I need to check into it. Most people are pretty cool with it, but it becomes cumbersome in that
Yeah.
aspect. Right. So, but going into what you're saying and uh, the difference between having a Google Voice or like your regular, um, personal type of service versus a businessy kind of service like Skipio or any other service that's similar to theirs is you are registered as a business so that the carriers know you're a business. Now, it's not foolproof. I got shut down by a major carrier, but the good thing about it is I could go to Scipio and say, hey, something's not right with my text because like the response rate that I'm getting is really, really, really low. And
Yeah.
there's something not right. So they looked into it and they're like, hey, one of the major carriers has shut you down. But they went to bat for me and they were able to get it going back up and running again. Where if you go to like a Google or an Apple, they don't give a shit about you. Like,
Yeah.
because
They don't even
first of all, like
contact.
first of all, technically, if you're using your iPhone for business for like that kind of tech stuff, it's technically not supposed to be allowed. People do it all the time, but when you get shut down for spam, it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
Because like they're gonna say, well, you're not supposed to be using your phone for this purpose. You know, it's a personal phone, it's not a business. Well, it's a business line. It's like but that's not how we see it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's just some stuff I've learned in the texting world where having a service that is dedicated to being a business texting world really, really helps. So, I just had to do it a little side there because
Yeah.
you're starting to understand that, and you said you see it because you're like, I got shut down, I couldn't do anything else, and I was dead in the water. So what do you think? Like, how do you compare like your texting marketing versus your email marketing before you started really implementing text and stuff? Did you feel like there's a big difference in response or like a greater success rate with getting some of those people on the phone or booked in for a session? How do you compare those two when you were just doing email versus when you implemented texting too?
Yeah, it's a game changer completely. Like like you take like I've taken so many masterminds and so many like this is how you run your photography business sort of workshops, boot camps, whatever. And everyone in the IPS world in particular, you're doing in-person sales or even online sales, whatever you're doing, if you're trying to sell products, you got to get them on the phone. You got to get them to talk to you. You got to like vet them. Everyone says that. Like, I don't know.
Can
It's
I
very,
interject real quick?
yeah,
It's such an old school tactic.
I know. I know. Yes. So there's this like part of me that completely subscribes to that. Like, yes, you do. You have to talk to them. You have to, talk about your value and all that stuff. But there's another big part of me that's like, these are the people that I'm targeting are, 25 to 40-year-old women having a baby.
Or
So
had a baby and they don't have time to talk on the phone.
I mean, that too. Yeah. But, like they're, like I'm at the very top. I just turned 40. I'm almost 41. So I'm
Shut
like,
up. I turned 49 in less than a month. So shut up.
yeah, okay. But what my point is that like I feel like I'm kind of a part of that, but I'm probably on, like on the getting out of that side of, generational stuff. But those moms are very much in the texting generation. They don't want to talk on the phone. They don't want to spend, they don't want to hear your sales pitch. They just want cute pictures of their newborn baby.
Well, and your
And
sales pitch can be a website. It's like,
yeah,
like your website's beautiful. Like your website lays it all out. It explains it all. If you go to your website, like if I go to your website, I know what you do. I know like the high end value that you are, and that's what we should be doing as photographers.
yeah,
I see so many photographers. This is a whole nother podcast, but yeah, I go to their website and it's just a bunch of pretty pictures, tells me nothing, shows me nothing, tells me nothing about pricing and stuff. And so if I sent them to the website, there's nothing for me to know. But for you, you can send them places to your website via text, which is probably what
yeah.
you're doing similar to me. And it's just like, it tells you all the information,
Yes.
So
Yeah. Well, and so here, like a little bit more background and like there's kind of two different things that I offer. I did the podcast that I did with Andrew Helmich was all about how I have a base package now.
Mhm.
And my base package includes 5 images and 5 matted prints. So the reason why I started doing that is because I had so many people that did not understand the whole session fee thing and, oh, it doesn't include anything. And so I felt like I had to have those phone calls so that I could explain it. And then I had to do a pre-session consultation where I explained it again. And like, I still would have people that would come in for their ordering appointment and be like, okay, well, we're not going to buy any prints. We're just going to have the digital files. So you're just going to send those to us, right? And I'm like, no, like it doesn't work like that. So there was this communication issue that I was constantly having. So I started doing this base package that includes some things in it. And I have so much less communication time because of that. So now when somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, we have a new baby on the way, we want to book a newborn session with you. What's your pricing? I can direct them to that page and say like, we'd love to talk to you more about this. You can book a call or we can do a pre-session consultation. Or if you feel like you're ready to book, here's our online booking, and like I don't go directly into that. I try and still get some like information from them via text messaging and whatnot. But I don't rely on that phone call the same way because of my base package versus these newborn model calls where it's a cold lead and they're seeing this like model, the word model is
Yeah.
like means we're getting everything for free, right? Oh, wait,
Shoot
are
and
you paying?
trade for service? It's like you're gonna give
Yeah.
me 5 photos because I gave you my time and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
no, I like my favorites is when they think that I'm going to pay them to model for me.
Yes, we get
That's the
that
best.
a lot in our New York
Yeah.
studio.
Yes. Yeah. So like those leads have a different, like I do actually need to get them on a phone call so
Right.
that they fully understand. And so the text messaging process is a little different depending on if it's somebody that I think is just going to book a base package, they're good. They can read all the information. Here it is. Make sure it works for your family, and we can do all of that via text messaging versus the colder the lead, the more I need to be able to
Right.
communicate with them.
Right.
And that those campaigns have a lot more like, well, we'd love to chat with your family and hear more about you guys and please book a call, and so it kind of depends on how I'm getting them into my
No,
world
it
and
totally. But like,
do.
have you in that same vein? Have you seen like, I mean, because another one of those old school tactics is the whole I talk to people all the time. You got to email people, got to email people, got to email people. That's great, but
Yeah.
like less and less people are relying and actually opening emails. And when they do open it, are they really reading it? Are they looking at
Yeah.
it? And then like we have attention spans that are size of a text. So you're not going to send an email that's the size of a text. So it's made me question a lot. It's just like, how much should I be marketing via text versus marketing and retargeting and remarketing via email? Like I texted Jared, the Scipio president the other day, and they just had a baby, so he was on maternity leave, and I was like, when do you come back, because I have some questions and I want to
Yeah.
pick your brain on something. And I think he came back today, but I want to do something for Black Friday, but I want to do it through text because I
Yeah.
think there would be a lot bigger response and a lot bigger success rate as opposed to doing it via email. Right. But at the same time, I have 20 something thousand people in my texting now for Scipio because again, it's volume for me, but
Yeah.
I gotta whittle that down a little bit because some people have never responded to anything and I got to get rid of them. So I'm working on a plan to figure that out. But I think I mean, do you agree that like if you're relying so much on just doing email and stuff, you're not going to have the results if you're doing the
Yeah.
same kind of things with text?
Yeah. I mean, I think adding text messaging has been huge for us. I will say that I think they go hand in hand. I think you need to do both.
I think you do. I agree. You got to do both, but
Yeah.
I think you're, especially early on, you're going to have
Yeah.
better success if long-term marketing and stuff. Email is the great thing.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper that way, honestly. If you're trying to text masses in texting, it's going to be really astronomical. But so yes, I would agree with the email side of things being that way, but I think and we do it hand to hand too. We send stuff
Yeah.
via text and we send stuff via email as well. So
Well, and a lot of times my text message will say something like, "Hey, we sent over our newborn welcome guide. Did you get it? Do you have any questions about it?" And I find that that works pretty well too, especially if it's like, if they really are interested and they want to learn more about us, like go to your email and like actually read it, like look at what we sent you. And sometimes like we've had a lot of issues. We actually switched to Tave from Honeybooks a couple of years ago now. But one of the problems that we were having is because people were not getting our emails. And like it said our email servers were healthy, all those things. And like they're like, I got nothing. And so I had all these leads that were coming in and I was responding and thinking that I wasn't getting responses back and going, oh, I guess they're no longer interested. Come to find out, my email was having all the issues with Honeybook. And so, so just stuff like that of like using them together and
yeah,
being like, hey, did you get this? Oh, you didn't? Shoot, maybe check your junk mail, and
yeah.
like just kind of verifying because people won't email back. I feel like, I don't know, there's something about like when they email back, they like have to write a whole email
You
versus
got to
the
write a
text.
book
Yeah.
instead of one sentence.
Yes, and like and even if it only needs a little one sentence, and so they're like, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna email her right now because I gotta like think about what I want to say." Versus a text, they'll very quickly email you back or text you back and just say,
Right.
"Oh yeah, I got it." And like I've sent emails that say, "Hey, did you get this?" And nothing.
Nice.
So it's like,
No, and so something we actually just started doing a couple of few weeks ago. I'm running a book project, and I like we're kind of doing our marketing with the book project very different than what we do with our normal Facebook stuff.
yeah,
Just because I wanted to test some new things. But what I found is there were some things that I'm like, okay, I need to just start implementing this within what we're doing for other stuff. And one of the things that I started doing was after somebody books a session, we have a after booking series of texts. And I
mm,
wasn't doing that before. I was sending emails, but I wasn't sending texts.
yeah,
And one of the things that we always have problems with, and we're always looking for ways to fix it, because like I'm coming to the conclusion, and I mean, transparency, I've done my part of like blaming the client for this
mm,
problem instead of saying if it continues to be a problem, what are we doing different to try and
yes,
fix it, right? And so I'm trying different things to fix it so that it doesn't become this big problem with with clients. And like I'm working with Joel Dunn, who's helped me with some of these things that after you book a client, how do you get them to understand what they're getting themselves into and all that kind of stuff. And he's really helped me with that. And it's increased our sales average because we were having this thing where we were like, man, we do this many sessions and this many people buy. If I were to get rid of the people in between, my sales average was going up like $600 to $800 or something like that. But we were making the same amount of money, so it's just
Yeah.
like, I would rather do less sessions and make more money, like make more
Really.
sales average and save my time. But anyway, I started sending this text thing, and so in email, what we do a lot is we send pictures and we send forms and we send, here's how to prepare your baby, here's how to prepare you, here's how to prepare your dog, whatever your genre is. And we send all this information that we're hoping and then expecting them to read, or a video or something like that. But what I've come to the conclusion with is send short text messages and send them to a blog that you wrote about the exact same thing, and they're still getting the information, but it's a 2-line text and it says, hey, check out our blog on how to get ready for your session. Boom.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to go to that. And then so as part of that, because one of the things that we had problems with is I didn't know how much you cost, even though we've talked about it, we've sent you emails about it, and like, I didn't know how much you cost. It's
Yeah.
something that, like, how did you not know? We give you a brochure when you come into the studio and you still don't know. Like, I mean, I've done everything so we're trying to do it
Yeah.
on the front end. And I would rather them cancel their sessions 3 or 4 days after they book it than
Oh
3 or 4 days after we did the
yeah.
session, they go, oh shoot,
Yes.
I didn't realize you were so expensive. So
Yes.
one of the texts that we send is actually, I think it's 3 days after they book their session. It's, hey, now is the time to start thinking about like how you want your photos printed. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but we specialize in wall art, and here's a link to the different kinds of products that we have to offer. And it's our product. It's not our full price list. It's our starting pricing, but it has all the different products we have with some pretty pictures that are sliders and stuff so that they can see and get an idea of what it is. But I'm not lying. Since we've started doing that, when those texts come out, I actually get responses. Like, one of the things that we say in that text is, please send us walls that you're considering putting on your house, in your room, like wall art on. And people
Yeah.
are sending us texts through those automated texts of like, here's a room that I want you to put the wall, and it's like, it's
Nice.
working.
Yeah. I can't ever get people to send me their
Yeah, I
photos
can't
of
get
their
them to
walls,
do it even
so
after the session. We've asked them 20 times. I just like,
uh-huh.
it's 3 days into it and it's like they're sending me the stuff, um but you can't know that until you try it, until you
Yeah.
test it. But like, we used to just use Skipio and texting for getting clients in the door. But now we're doing more and more of after the client's actually done a session with us. And
Smart.
eventually we're going to get to a place where, because Jared and I talked about some workflows with this, of like, how do you use texting? Because you can, for you, it'd be amazing because you're like seeing people every single year. You can set it up at after their session's over or after their sale is over with, you put them into a new bucket. And when the baby's birthday comes up, that sends them a happy birthday thing.
Yeah.
When a year anniversary comes up, then you start sending them texts like, hey, we've got a new offer for you. Come in back into the studio. Or
Yeah. Well, and we do all that through email, but I've never done it through
But
text, so that's
so
really good. Yeah.
so so challenge to you to put together
Yeah.
something that, like, now you put them in, you're just putting them into a new bucket. And then
Yeah.
and then every time, the same thing with trying to get reviews. I hear people say, oh, I can't get reviews. I can't get reviews. I can't review. What are you doing? Well, I send
Yeah.
them an email, like a email, like that's it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you can do is, it's just like, after a sales session, you can say, hey, I would love to get a review from you. And you send them like a thank you text. Thank you so much for coming in our studio and being part of our studio. We would love it if you would give us a quick review on Google, and send them the link. And then if
Yeah.
they don't click you can actually set it up that if they don't click the link 2 days later, it says, hey, I just want to give you a quick reminder, if you don't mind leaving us a review. You don't want to bug them, but some people need a reminder. Again, you
Yeah.
might have sent the text at a time where they're in work and they were like, I can't do this. Oh, now I can do the review,
Yeah.
but it's so powerful. Like, and I agree with you. It's just like, you've got to go hand in hand but I agree with you too. I think there's a place for doing phone calls, and I don't think phone calls are bad, but what we're learning in our business is if we try and do phone calls with everybody, it's becoming
Exhausting.
problematic.
Exhausting.
And everything. So we're always trying to curtail that and all that stuff. So yeah, but so do you have any advice to anybody that's like, because you just started doing texting and like in this capacity, you were doing it
Yeah.
through like Google Voice. Somebody that wants to start doing texting and automating that process and doing that, do you think, my first question is, do you think you have to be a high volume studio to start? Or
No.
can you start as at any level that you're at? And what kind of advice would you give somebody that's starting out doing texting within their business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that had like kind of scared me about it in the past was just that like, oh, like anything automated, you're like, oh, well, I have to figure out how to do this and this is overwhelming and like how do I don't have like a full workflow or a whole campaign. Like, do I really need this? Like I can just send a one-off text. But the thing that's cool about this is like anything with your business, like you make little teeny steps. And like over the year, like, I mean, we've had it since January, right? So over the year, I've added more and more canned texts and I've added more details to my campaigns. And when we get off this Zoom call, I'm going to go do some of these.
You were just so you guys know, I could see her because we're zooming. I see her making notes when I'm saying certain
Writing
things.
these things down, like, because this is so smart. But it's like, like when I first started, I didn't have a what to wear guide. So I slowly made one and I didn't have a newborn prep, session email. And so I slowly made one. And so I think just like all those things with your business, you have to start somewhere. And text messaging is like, if you just start a little bit, you're going to slowly build up, whether you use Skipio or another service like it, you can build up those pre-canned text messages and you can build up those campaigns. And now you have one for maternity and one for newborn and one for family. And now you have one for the book project. And now you have one for this model call. And, you can make those little tweaks and you just got to get into it. And also call John because he has great ideas and he's really good at teaching how to do this stuff.
Thank you. No, no. I mean, well, and it's also too like what you heard me saying is, and you just said it too. You have that what to wear guide or whatever, and you said put it in your email. Well,
Yeah.
I would challenge you, whatever that what to wear guide is, put it into a website on your web page, even if it's not front facing. We use it as blogs and
Yeah.
have it as a blog post. But then now that URL is a live URL that you can put in a text and you don't have to send them the verbiage in an email or whatever.
Yeah.
Like have them click something and then they go to your website that, takes them to different places. And then I would even challenge you that if you're going to do that, put like your investment page or where you want them to go to next on that page, because they might click it and then go and see some of your
Yeah.
products or something like that, but you got to guide people, lead them to the water and not
Yeah.
just, or whatever. But it's so true. You got to start somewhere. And it's like, I find, and this, I mean, I'm sure you've been in the business long enough. The people that struggle are the people that just don't, they talk about it, but they don't ever
They don't
do it,
implement.
and because they think, oh, texting and putting all these texts together and doing all this automation stuff, it's just overwhelming. It is. It feels that way. But if you just do put like how long, come on, Paige, tell everybody how long does it take you to put a campaign together in Skipio?
About 3 minutes now.
There you go. But I mean,
Yeah.
even when you started, it probably didn't take that long once you figured out how to do it. I mean, it's not that hard. It's like add next text. When do you want it to go out? Add next text. I mean, it's not that difficult, but we make it in our mind that it's like, I don't have time for this. I can't do this. And then you're missing out and like all that time too. Like every day you say that, you're like, well, that's the day you could have had text going out to people,
Yeah. I also think people get like really hung up on what to say. And so they
Sure.
spend all this time like, oh, I don't know, like, how do I word this? And it's like,
say something.
just word it.
Well, and
like
and here's the thing. And here's the thing too with texting that I learned from Jared. And I actually was in a mastermind group the other day and we were talking about it and somebody shared a text that they sent and I was cringing as they were rating it. I was like, oh my God. And then so I chimed in and I said, hey, can I give you some advice? And she goes, and after I said what I'm about to say, she said, I wish you would have told me that 48 hours ago before I sent this text out to all these like 300 people or something like that. But she sent an email. in a text form. It was way too long. It was not personal. It was not and what Jared says and what he talks about is when you're sending a text, it has to be like you're sending a text. If I were to
Yeah.
text Paige right now, what would I say to Paige? And if Paige were to respond to me, what would Paige say back? And what we do is we put emojis, we say things like "ha ha," and stuff like that, and we make it that makes it it's not personal.
Yeah.
But it makes it real. It's like a real person's doing it. It's not automated. So when you're
Yeah.
sending a text, don't think the perfect verbiage. Think if you were to apply for something, what would you want to receive as a text? And so like our simple text that we go say, thank you. Hey, Paige, thanks so much for your interest in our photography studio. I can't wait to have you in the studio. Smiley face. That's all you have to say. That's all you
Yeah.
have to say. Like, that's what you want to say to them in the first place if they were just to text you normally, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
and one other thing that I have learned is like that you always like end your text with one question. Like don't ask
correct,
multiple questions, just
correct,
ask one and make it
correct.
something that it can respond to quickly. It's like like I'm not going to put like how are you feeling this pregnancy? Are you overwhelmed? Like because they're going to go like I don't know how to respond. I don't know who this person is. Like you know,
You asked me 3 questions in one sentence.
right. Like, yeah, like I don't even know what she wants. And like this is a very personal and I never email or text about what are your kids' names? Because people get weird about that. Like I don't ask questions like that feel like, oh, I don't want to
Why do
answer
you
that.
want to know?
Yeah, why do you want to know? What are their
Are you some
birthdays? What do
creeper?
they wait? What's their social security number? Yeah. So like asking that question though, like really keeps the conversation flowing and like short little things that like, is this your first baby? Yeah, it's my first. Oh, great. Are you having a boy or a girl? Yes, it's a
Yeah.
boy. Like those like it's really easy for them to answer.
And another thing too along those lines, and is another little lesson learned, is like when you're not getting and this is something you might be wanting to write down on whatever pad of paper you have, but is if you're not getting responses from people, a key question that you can ask is, hey Paige, I wanted to make sure you're getting my text, question mark.
Yep. Yep. I've gotten
And
that.
that's all you got to say. Because if they
Yeah.
don't respond, then they're not your client because they're just not even responding to that, or maybe they're not getting your, I don't know, who knows, but you got to think in that regards and keep it short. Like that's one thing that's nice about having a texting service is that going through Google or something like that, you can only do 350
Yeah.
characters, right? So you
That
have to
bugs
be
me
sure.
sometimes, though. I'm like, I gotta
Yeah, you
cut
have to be
how can I
strategic.
reword that?
Yeah, you have to be sure. So a little trick, FYI, if you want to, it doesn't always work perfectly, but if you have a text that you're just like, how do I reword this and make it 350 characters, I will take what I want to say, put it in Chat GPT and say,
Oh,
turn this into a text that's less than
smart.
350 characters, and it'll rewrite the text for me in Chat GPT, and then that's what I use.
Awesome.
so
Yeah, that's
so
smart.
if you can't write a text on your own, use Chat GPT.
Yeah, there you
Have
go.
it have AI write it for you. So no, Paige, it was so awesome having you on here. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
giving us
my
some time.
pleasure.
This has been great insight, and I know people that listen to this, I hope people listen to this because there was a lot of nuggets of information that both of us have shared that can help people with texting, and it's so important and so valuable, and it's going. The nice thing about texting, that it's a double-edged sword, by the way, is it's not regulated. It's not government regulated in the United States. Now, if you're in other countries listening to this, there's different regulations in other countries, but in the United States, there is not any federal regulations regulating text at this moment. It's all done by carriers. It's a double-edged sword because the carriers can make their own rules and there's no guidelines and they can change their rules and all that stuff. However, they're trying to, from what I understand, is the carriers don't want to make it so crazy that the government feels like they have to get involved, right? And
Yeah.
so they're trying to keep the government out of it. But like with email, it is regulated by the FCC. And so like there's certain, like you have to have an opt-in form, you have to do certain things where right now with texting there's not. So but use that wisely because you don't want to abuse that privilege of being able to text people. Give them the option. If they opt out, opt them out.
Yeah.
That's the
Totally.
other thing that's really nice with a service like Skipio or something. There is a button to opt them out, and they will never receive a text from you again, even if they opt in again somewhere. They won't
Yeah.
receive a text. So anyway, but thank you so much for giving me the time.
My
We got some
pleasure.
great
Yeah.
information here. So tell me, like, where can people find you and see what you do and contact you if you don't mind being contacted if they have any
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah. So our website is gleanandco.com, GLEANANDCO.com. So you can go there. All my contact information is there, or we're also on Instagram at Glean and Co. Just all one word.
Cool. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. Again, Paige, I appreciate you coming on and giving me some time. It was really
Oh, my
glad. I'm
pleasure.
really
I
glad
love
we
talking about
got to
this stuff.
connect like this. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.